Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Raider roster report. This is Raider Sparks coming at you today. We're going to talk about Mike Mayock and what I believe the Raiders should do as far as his long-term future. I'll state right away. I think they should keep Mike Mayock, and we'll kind of make the case for why that is. My last video I did, it was after the Chiefs game, so that was pretty brutal to do. Definitely covered a lot of ground that I think Mike Mayock would need to do to convince Mark Davis to keep him around. And one of the things we talked about was making the team better right away, but also reviewing how the drafts have gone for the Raiders because it's a huge part of building our roster. And so today's video will focus on that, kind of evaluating the draft from last year. Maybe we can talk a little bit about further draft or other drafts that Mayock's done. And since I said, one thing that he should do is focus on, kind of explaining the draft process and how these picks came about for the Raiders to Mark Davis, probably do the same for my own draft. Obviously, I covered a lot of the draft leading up to last year's draft, and I probably should do the same for myself. So I just thought I'd have a little fun with it, see how my evaluation of some of the players went. And now that some of the rookie all teams have been started floating out there, I know the season's a week left in the season, but there's some stuff out there, some accolades being given out to the rookies. Kind of see how it matches up with what I was talking about leading up to the draft, and obviously how we did overall in the draft as well. But also in that last video, it's very critical of some of the players, and for good reason. But hey, lately some of these guys have stepped up, so excellent job with those guys. I mean, Zay Jones is definitely starting to turn the corner and looking good. We got a legit shot at the playoffs, obviously, with the Chargers game coming up. So that's fantastic. Josh Jacobs started running with purpose again, making the line look a whole lot better. Who knows if the line was really as bad as it was for a lot of the years, or if it was just a problem of not having the correct running back there, or not having a running back hitting the holes as hard as Josh has been hitting him lately. Very concerning with the injuries. I really hope he can play and stay healthy and all those good things because we definitely need him. But definitely encouraging sign there. Carr's pulled out some games for us, which has been great. Some of the interceptions maybe not as great. I'm always kind of on the fence with him, but I mean, he's getting the job done. So, what are you going to say? I do think the Raiders are going to bring him back, and that's going to be a huge part. That contract is going to be a huge part of how free agency goes, and obviously how it's going to affect our draft. And we'll get into some more shows like that as free agency and going over contracts and things like that. But yeah, so I just wanted to say, good job on those guys for stepping up and doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's take a look at the draft from last year and just kind of see. Obviously, we drafted Leatherwood first round and Mooring second round, and I think if you look at that, is to just initially look at that for Mayock, and it kind of seems like a bust with the Leatherwood pick first and Trayvon second. But if you were to reverse those and say, hey, we're going to get our starting free safety in the first round, and we're going to get our starting left or right guard in the second round, I don't think anybody would necessarily say this is a terrible draft. In fact, I probably would think that it's probably would rank fairly well. I mean, Trayvon, Gilbrandt put out his all-rookie team, and Trayvon was one of the two safeties to make it. So you'd have basically a potential all-rookie team as your number one pick, and then your starting right guard, who had some up-and-down moments this season for sure, as your second-round pick. So if you flip those two, I don't think it would look as bad. Of course, we're missing our first-round picks the last 3 years. It's been 6 first-round picks, and so that's the tough part of this is evaluating Mayock in the first round, and I have a feeling that it was Gruden making the picks and not him, because if you look at the rest of his drafts, they've been studly. I mean, if you look at the guys that are playing right now, they're all guys that he's picked primarily in lower rounds that are killing it. Look at Renfro, Max Crosby. Foster has kind of been up and down, but he's obviously starting in place of Waller. I mean, there's a lot of guys. John Simpson is our starting left guard. So there's a lot of guys on there on the team that he's brought in through the draft in lower rounds that have been big time contributors for us. So yeah, I think overall, if you look at it, it's been pretty good. Malcolm in the third round, he's showing promise. Divine Diablo, obviously, he got a starting weak side linebacker in the third round for us, which is fantastic. And Gillespie, I'd like to see him on the field more. I don't know if he's hurt or if he's not getting it or he's not physically able to do the job. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I would love to see him out there. And then obviously getting a starting slot cornerback in Nate Hobbs, which unfortunately the young man made a mistake. And we'll get into that later, but I really hope he plays this week and gets some mentorship going for that young man. Make sure he's understanding that mistakes were made. So, but anyways, that's the draft. So if you look at it, there's 4 starters: Leatherwood, Trayvon, Divine, and Nate Hobbs. Another player that looked like he has a lot of promise coming off the edge. He's starting to get some play, and another guy that we're not sure of yet, Gillespie. So I mean, overall, that's a solid draft. If you just flip those two, the first and second round picks, I don't think anybody would really question the draft too much. I mean, I don't see how you could. But if I take a look at mine, if I do my same evaluation, I had us going with Darashaw, which would have been a little controversial pick because he missed a lot of the season as at the start because of injury, but he's been a starter the rest of the time. He's actually really good, so that would have been a pretty good pick. Then I got Trayvon Smith, who's obviously a starter for Kansas City, and they got him in the 6th round. And I said in my draft, if you go back and and look at some of the previous videos, as the number 1 guard in the class, and turns out I probably not far from correct in that. But he also, Gil Brandt's team for offense, made the all-offensive team as one of the guards as a 6th round pick. And there's only one other player outside the top 2 rounds, and it was Osa with the Cowboys that made his team. So all the difference makers in the draft, I mean, you got to get them early. You can't miss on the first 2 rounds. And so and I'll kind of go through the draft of how it played out as well. But anyways, Trey Smith, that would have been he's a starter. Paul Adebo, up and down moments with the Saints. He started a bit. I used week 16 depth chart, and he was listed as 2nd string on there, but he's definitely their future starting outside cornerback. And then I actually drafted Gillespie in my draft. I had Derek Barnes. He's a starter as well, middle linebacker. Good player. Bobby Brown. He's 2nd string D tackle for the Rams, but he's a guy that I really wanted for the Raiders, and he's kind of buried on that depth chart. That line's really good, but if we could ever make a trade with the Rams to get him, bring him in, that would be spectacular. I think he's going to be a good player. He's just buried on the depth chart right now. Marco Wilson. He's a starting outside cornerback. Another guy that was in my final mock draft, and then Israel Mukomo for the Dallas Cowboys, a strong safety. He's 3rd string on the depth chart, so unproven right now, kind of like Gillespie's unproven. And then Jonathan Adams out of Arkansas State, which that young man made a mistake. He actually was doing all right in camp, but made a mistake, and he's paid the price. He's not even in the NFL, but bring him back. I'd say he unfortunately brought a gun onto a college campus, which is not smart, but somebody's got to give him a second chance because he actually was physically able to do it as far as the reports I got out of the Lions camp. So anyways, if you look at my draft, I'm pretty solid. That was my final draft, and I think either way, there's 4 starters. Paul Adebo is going to be a starter. Gillespie's unknown. Bobby Brown will be a starter in this league one day. Just the Rams are so good on their line right now. He's not. He's buried. We should trade for him for sure. But I'm sure the Rams need draft picks. So anyways, and then a couple of unproven guys. So overall, pretty good draft. But I mean, if you compare it to what Mayock did, still 4 starters, an unproven guy, and a guy with up-and-coming talent. So I think overall, that's a pretty solid draft. If you go back and look, outside of our first-round picks, there's been some swing and misses. It's going to happen, but overall, pretty solid. If I look at my overall draft and the guys that I really liked, Christian Barmore, I had him as a first round pick for us. Obviously, the Patriots picked him up in the second round, and he's on Gil Brandt's. I'll go with Gil Brandt's all rookie team, and so he was on it. He was a guy that I thought would be the best all around, most impactful defensive tackle, and he probably was this year. Osa was another one that I really liked as a three technique for us. He was picked in the third round, and he made the all rookie team for Gil Brandt, and he's a guy that I really, really liked. If you watch my previous videos, he was a guy I hyped up a lot. He had a tremendous Senior Bowl. Aziz Ojulari, I said, would be the best edge rusher, and he has him down as the best, or as the all rookie team edge rusher, along with Jalen Phillips, who I was on the fence with because of all the injuries and how he had retired. But he had a big rookie season too, so I can't complain about that. But I was just worried about the injuries with him. Micah Parsons, obviously the best player and the best rookie. Well, Jamar Chase is right there. Let's just say Micah Parsons, the best defensive player in the class. And I was critical. I was kind of reviewing him as a traditional middle linebacker, but the Cowboys were smart. They made him an edge rusher. I know he does play linebacker. He does both. He does them both really well. So congrats to that guy. I was a little bit harsh on my critique of him on the leading up to it, mainly because I was really hoping we'd get a traditional middle linebacker, and that's the reason I was pushing Nick Bolton, because he was definitely a guy I liked, because I just been tired of our not drafting linebackers, I guess, or lack of drafting linebackers. But Nick Bolton also on the all rookie team, and tremendous player there with Kansas City. And then Jock, who they listed also here. And I was critical of him too, just because I was concerned that he was more of a strong safety, that he'd be the fit for our strong safety. And if you go back and listen to my first couple of videos I did, one was about Max Crosby, one was about Jonathan Abram, and I was critical about Jonathan Abram and how he was more of a free safety type. And I know people don't agree with that, but his physical traits are free safety traits. And playing strong safety, he was just going to get hurt. And that's unfortunately proven to be the case. 3 seasons in the NFL, he's been knocked out of 2 of them for injury. He's physically just not able to play that position. I was worried about Jock doing the same thing at linebacker. And he had a tremendous year. He's a very good linebacker. But I do think that he also had injuries and missed 3 games this year because of it. So I think he's more of a strong safety, and he would have been perfect for that Jonathan Abram role we were trying to get Jonathan Abram to do. So my whole thought process leading up to the draft was, if we move on from Jonathan Abrams or move him to free safety, then we would pick Jock, and it'd be a perfect fit for this system. But it looked more and more like we were going with Jonathan Abrams, so I took Jock off my board because of that. And I don't think I'm wrong with those evaluations. In fact, I think with the injuries, it's kind of spot on, but we'll see what happens in time. These are young players, and anything can happen. Patrick Surtain at cornerback was another all rookie team. I didn't really even evaluate him. I knew we weren't going to get him. Same thing with Greg Newsome and Eric Stokes. Both those guys, first round picks, and I just didn't see us getting a cornerback in the first round, but all 3 of those guys were excellent. And actually, the one guy that surprised me a little bit was Eric Stokes. I didn't have him as a first round, and I was a little harsh on him, I think, a little bit, but he's proven to be a really good player there at Green Bay. So I think they got a good pick there. So I probably would have missed on that one. Javon Holland and Trayvon. I thought Trayvon would have been a first round pick. I was shocked that we got him in the second round. Holland, I thought he was a second rounder, but he's proven he's had just as good, if not even a better years than Trayvon, but a little different system. So I think as far as what we wanted out of our free safety position, I think we got the guy that met our system the best. So, and then Holland, he's done well as well. So those are the Gil Brandt's all rookie team, and kind of my evaluations leading up to the draft on some of those players. So I think I was pretty spot on most all of them, except for probably Eric Stokes. I probably would have missed on that one. And then the other side of it, the offensive side, Mac Jones. I mean, I think a lot of people saw that one coming, as just because he was going to the Patriots and the system. I don't think maybe leading up to the draft, talent-wise, people weren't saying that, but as soon as he went to the New England, you're like, oh yeah, that's probably going to work out well. No surprise on the running back, Javonte Williams and Najee. Those guys were just really good players. Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle, excellent players. I mean, I think everybody saw that. And then Kyle Pitts. I think Freiermuth could have made this list too if they would have added another tight end. Freiermuth has had a fantastic season with Pittsburgh as well, so I think he could have been added. Creed Humphrey, again, fortunately the Chiefs hit on another one, and they got their center, so fantastic. Trey Smith, who I really liked, obviously in the 6th round, Kansas City again. That's really frustrating. I'm not sure why we didn't pick him, but that's another point. Elijah Vera Tucker, 1st round, and then Slater and Sewell. We couldn't have got those guys anyway, so they were 1st rounders, and those were the tackles. But that's kind of the way that the all rookie team kind of laid out and how guys did. Some other guys, Jamar Chase, Parsons, Slater, Pitts, all made the Pro Bowl. Surtain and Humphreys are alternates, so those guys did an excellent job. And as far as PFF, like Nate Hobbs scored really high, which was fine for us in the 5th round, which is fantastic. And John Holland, obviously, we talked about him. Some other guys, Michael Carter was looking good when he was playing. Elijah Mitchell, obviously, looking good. Some of the running backs. So that's kind of the most impactful rookies, I guess. And that type of thing. But mainly, one of the takeaways I had, I mean, if you don't get an impactful player in the 1st or 2nd round, it's hard to find. And we were able to do that with Hobbs. I mean, you think about his PFF had him graded as one of the top, if not the top, slot cornerback. And so to find that in the 5th round is impressive for Mayock. And that's something that you have to look at with what he's done in the later rounds. But you also have to be concerned with the 1st round. And so that's that conversation they need to have. Was it Gruden making those picks, or was it him, or what was that like as far as how that was going down? But again, the drafts have been solid. Look at the guys that hopefully start getting some extensions as well, like Renfro and Max, and get our plan together for the Super Bowl in 2 years from now. Because this year we're right on the cusp, if not making the playoffs, make a push. Next year it should be even better, and then we really should be focused on that Las Vegas Super Bowl, and I'm sure they are. But that's kind of the way that the breakdown goes, and the draft is really tough. I mean, I looked at the Week 16 depth chart, and there were 2 starting centers, both of which, Kendrick Green in the 3rd round, and then Humphrey in the 2nd round. Both of which were terrific players. I actually had Kendrick Green as the 2nd best guard. I thought he was going to play guard in the NFL, but yeah, Pittsburgh put him at center, and he's a really good player. On Week 16, there were 7 starting guards, and as far as where they were drafted, I mean, you're looking anywhere from 1st round all the way through the 6th round. So those guys all throughout the draft. Royce Newman, I had highlighted in one of my videos. He's a starter for Green Bay. He was picked in the 4th round. So there's talent that you can find at guard all through the draft. And so as we put our draft plans together, something to consider. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 1st round pick. And then there were 10 or 12 guards listed in the 2nd team as well. So, and those draft picks ranged all the way from let's see here, 2nd round all the way through 7th round. Even a UDFA was listed as a 2nd string guard. So there's talent all through the draft on the line. Tackles sort of the same. I mean, if you look at the tackle position, there are 8 starting tackles in the NFL Week 16 that were rookies. Drafted, 3 of them were 1st rounders, but then you had a 2nd and a 4th, 2 5th rounders even that were drafted. So that was good. And then there were 4 or 5 2nd team tackles as well. So, and those draft picks go anywhere from the 2nd round all the way through UDFA. So there's talent all throughout on the line. And actually, there were actually 9 starting because Cole Van Lannon got promoted, I believe, by Green Bay to a start. Maybe that was an emergency start, though. So, but regardless, and he was a 6th rounder, but there are guys up and down and on the line for guard and tackle. So when I'm looking at the draft, if we want to get the most impactful player, it doesn't necessarily need us to have a a lineman or an offensive lineman, because we can find those all over the draft. In fact, some of the guys that were drafted, Dan Moore, I highlighted him as a tackle for us, and he's a starting lineman. Larry Borum out of Missouri, I had him the same thing. He was a 5th-round pick. Jalen Moore, he's a starting right tackle, and I had him. All these guys I had highlighted in previous videos as potential starters in the league, and they turned out to be starters. So these are guys that we can definitely find. They all had good Senior Bowls. Some of them were in between guard and tackle. Same thing with Leatherwood. He was in between guard and tackle, and I pointed out in my video. And sure enough, I said he was more of a guard, and he definitely was. You pretty much see that at the Senior Bowl as well. So if you get a chance, pay attention to the linemen in the Senior Bowl. You can. I learned a lot from that just doing it this year, and it was you kind of start to see how these guys can fit in the NFL. Deontay Smith he's a backup as well. I had him as projected as a guard, but he's a backup tackle in the league. So another guy those are all guys that I had highlighted as lower round draft picks for the Raiders to get, and they're all productive NFL players. So something to keep in mind. Running backs, again, all kind of scattered. There were 4 starting running backs in Week 16, drafted 1st through 6th round. I mean, Elijah Mitchell was a 6th-rounder who I really liked to come out. Louisiana, but the 49ers got him a good job. He had some injuries, though, for sure, so it's tough. And then there were 3 second-team and 4 third-team running backs. So kind of all spread out, and the draft picks all spread out. So running back you can definitely get, and this is not rocket science. I think everybody knows it, but when you look at the draft, yeah, you can get a running back all throughout the draft. I mean, there were guys picked 5th round, 6th round, UDFA guys, 2nd string, being productive players in the NFL. So that, and then all throughout the depth charts, you see running backs all over that were drafted, UDFAs, all this stuff. So, and wide receiver is the one that, man, if you don't get one right away, it's tough. I mean, there were, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 5 starting wide receivers. 3 of them were 1st-rounders, and then a 3rd and a 4th-rounder. So, but if you look at it, all these guys are 12 second-team wide receivers drafted all throughout, like mainly all second, a lot of 2nd-rounders, 3rd-rounders, 5th, 4th. So if we want an impactful wide receiver, the best odds is the 1st round. After that, it gets tough. It's a tough position. It's not college. Being receiver in the NFL takes a little time. So if we want that impactful guy, we might have to consider that the 1st round. I'm really hopeful that we go the free agent route to get it, so we already have them established, so we get to the Super Bowl to make sure. But that's something to consider. And I know a lot of people are down on our line this year, but they're starting to play a little better. And you just kind of look at the draft analysis and the way that you can find starting productive players. It's, your odds are more in your favor to get a offensive lineman later in the draft and to get a 1st-round receiver that can come in and be that difference maker, the water of the chase. Kadarius Toney did pretty well this year. Even Rashad Bateman's listed as a 2nd-stringer. He was a 1st-round pick. But all these other guys that you think are going to be huge difference makers, and the 2 guys that were drafted, Nico Collins and Amon St. Brown, in the 3rd and 4th rounds, part of the reason why they're starters is because the team that they're on, they're not good. So that's kind of something to consider. But everybody else, I mean, is 2nd string, 3rd string, 4th string, whatever. And so, I don't know. Something to consider. Safety wise, that 2nd round was there's 3 starters in the 2nd round, and then a 3rd rounder, and then after that, a bunch of guys all across the board in the 2nd round. They're listed as 2nd string and even 3rd string. Jamar Johnson, who everybody was really high on, it was picked in the 5th round. He's listed 3rd string. Elijah Molden, 3rd round pick. He's listed as 3rd string. So all these guys that people were really high on didn't pan out as much, but they're kind of depth guys like Gillespie. They're kind of guys that you're not sure what's going to happen yet. So Some of these guys take time, but the most impactful guys, we got one of them was that second round. That was huge. So good job for us doing that. But some real productive safeties, just guys that are going to need some time. So, and I don't think we necessarily need to look at the safety position. That strong safety spot might be something we consider with Abrams' injuries. And personally, I think we can upgrade there because we need a guy that can be on the field. And 2 of the 3 years he's been knocked out, so it's going to be kind of tough. So that could be an area that we look at early in the draft again, maybe that second round, and get that strong safety that we're looking for, or potentially free agency, or maybe Gillespie is the guy. You never know. We shall see. But something to consider in the draft. And then cornerbacks, kind of all over too. You had a few first round picks, but you also had, Keith Taylor in the 5th round, Marco Wilson, who I really liked, in the 4th round as a starter. Aubrey Thomas out of Michigan for the 49ers. He's picked 3rd round. He's a starter. So, there were 8 starting cornerbacks in the NFL. The rookies week 16. So, and then you had another 10 listed as backups, but still some productive players in there as well. And again, from the draft standpoint, you got everything from pretty much 5th round, 2nd to 5th round with those guys. So, something to keep in mind. We can definitely get depth later in the draft for cornerback, but if we want that standout, that impact player, really what you're looking at is a 1st round pick, or take a flyer and get lucky. Obviously, we got lucky with Nate Hobbs. We did a good job scouting him, but there's a couple other guys that are good starters in this league that can be picked. But if you want that true difference maker, that true rookie impact player, again, 1st round. So, wide receiver and cornerback, I guess that's why so many go in the 1st round, because those are the guys that are going to come in. Not to say that they won't have productive careers later, but if you want that impact guy and your goal is to get to the Super Bowl in 2 years, those are sort of the positions that you need to draft. Just even looking at how it works out. So something to consider when putting our draft plans together for next year, and kind of where we're at after free agency and those types of things. But for Mayock, if you look at his draft, getting 4 starters from last year, and then look at all the players that are being productive players for us that he's got later rounds, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't bring him back. Free agency, I think a lot of the free agency has to do with him and bringing in Gus Bradley, because look at all the players Gus has brought in. Even Faison, Teamer, Perryman, All Pro. You got Casey Hayward's rated the best zone cornerback. So many of these guys have come in because of Gus Bradley. So the talent that he's brought in, and I'm sure helped in the draft room as well. Picking Trayvon and picking Divine Diablo and Gillespie and Hobbs and Malcolm. So I think bringing him back too would be crucial. Hopefully Mayock's pounding the table for him as well. I know the head coach is going to have some say, but I want to get back to a head coach that has all the power. I want our GM to have that control, hire the coach that's going to, kind of best fit the personnel that we already have, so we can build off of it, not have to rebuild. So hopefully that's where we're at with Mayock. Again, I think there's some good moves that have been made in the draft. I'm pretty happy with the way my draft analysis went from last year, after kind of seeing the accolades that have come out and going back and listening to some of my stuff, and just reading over some of my notes I had on some of these players. That was pretty good. I learned a lot from some of the bowl games last year. I didn't watch as many bowl games this year because I found that watching some of these guys at their all-star games and all the all-star practices and things like that, you learn a lot. Especially with the linemen, you really see kind of what they can do, what their limitations are, and so where they fit in the NFL. So that's something that, and again, that's why there's so many players that can contribute in late rounds that are playing on the line. So hopefully, as I put my draft plan together next year, or for this upcoming draft, I'll probably keep that in mind as I'm doing it. Unless somebody just jumps off the page, which could happen. There's a lot of good linemen out there. And depending on where we draft too, hopefully we draft 32nd. But anyways, looking forward to the game coming up with the Chargers. definitely hopeful Mayock sticks around and keeps building this team so we can get a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Anyways, hopefully you liked the video today. If you do, please subscribe, like the video, share the video, and leave some comments. I'd like to hear what Raider Nation thinks about Mayock sticking around, some of the choices he had, or some of the choices he's made in the draft. What you guys think about that? Kind of what you think of the process, and yeah, just in general, just want to hear your comments and feedback, that type of thing, and we'll keep building this roster little by little. I think there are still things they can do. There's still guys on practice squads that we should probably be heavily considering. I mentioned one too is not on the practice squad, but potentially trading for a young up and coming lineman that maybe is buried on depth chart, something like that. Something to consider. Bobby Brown, I think he's a really good player. Anyways, that's kind of where I'm at with this. Hopefully, Mayock does stick around. Please share, like, comment, all those good things. And again, this is Raider Sparks. We'll talk to you next time on the Raider Roster Report.